Sarah.
Yes, Alex.
What's the best sex that you've ever had?
The sex where it didn't matter how good it was.
Sounds right.
Welcome to Mistakes Were Made, a podcast about non-monogamy for messy people like us. I'm Sarah. I'm a queer, non-monogamous therapist, parent, and writer who is, I'm realizing, maybe working through my sociology kink on this podcast.
That's a weird kink.
Thanks.
I'm her husband and co-host, Alex. I'm working through my kink about being terrified of other people's kinks. Is that a kink? Can that be a kink?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll call that like a meta kink.
Yeah.
And I'm Jessica here, resident monogamist. Gosh, I don't know what kink I'm working through here, but I did major in sociology, so maybe it's somehow connected to all of this.
Yeah.
I was going to say you have a voyeurism.
Yeah, I was going to say it's pretty obviously voyeurism.
Right.
Everybody.
They can't
everybody.
know I'm watching.
It's a different kind of voyeurism where you're just like there with recording.
Yeah.
Auditory. I'm only listening.
Oralism? No, that's not right.
Okay, so we're talking about sex. We're
Yes,
talking
sex.
about good sex. We're talking about good sex with like the capital G and the capital S and
Capital D.
and the capital D and the capital P, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway,
V.
and V and L.
I don't know what
Z.
L is.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I've never heard of those. Am I doing it wrong?
Okay, I think we've established that clearly nobody here is having good sex.
No, I've never had sex at all.
Yeah, we're talking about it.
Yeah, we're talking
being
about
a
the
little-
idea of good sex.
The idea of good sex. Yes. I
What
want
is
anybody who showed up to this podcast thinking that they were going to get a tutorial on how to have good sex,
No,
leave now.
That's not gonna happen. There are a lot of other podcasts.
There are a lot
that
of
will
other
tell you
podcasts
that.
doing that, and it's not ours.
Yeah.
We'll put some links in the show notes.
We're going to tell you how good sex doesn't exist.
But before we like dive into what we're doing and why, I just wanted to start with what is good sex to the three of us? And I don't want you to have a smart answer. Okay, don't give me your like thoughtful grown-up answer. Just like what comes to mind. When you think about good sex. When I think about first having been like introduced to the idea of sex, like when I was younger.
Oh, you're
right?
talking about in a cliched sense.
Yeah, I'm talking
Okay,
about a
well,
cliched sex. Like
Oh.
when I say good sex,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
And you just like you're conjuring images here, and I don't know
Yeah.
what they are, but
it's
I
like,
don't. Yeah,
it's Berlin is playing, and there's like sheets, transparent sheet, not transparent,
Gauzy
curtains
I
blowing
know,
in the
the
breeze.
exact sex scene that you're referencing,
Yeah.
and I bet half of our listeners do too.
Ooh.
And yeah, there's like real shadowy. There's like a lot of shadows, and everybody's wrapped in pleasure.
Wrapped in pleasure.
Wrapped.
Is this from? Are you talking
Wrapped,
about?
R-A-P-T.
Are you talking about Top Gun?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
And
And they play homoerotic volleyball beforehand.
Ooh,
I thought so.
yeah.
And then probably everything they're expressing in the sex is actually.
And
has
then he
to do
comes
with-
over and he's like, "Can I take a shower?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was really good.
And he's actually like fucking Iceman in his mind.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Probably.
I'm just back there to like, what would I think if some guy came over for dinner and was like, "Can I take a shower?"
I thought that's just what people did
Yeah.
because of that movie.
This
I
is
was
gonna
like,
be-
the beginning of every date is ask to take a shower.
We were talking about how like people have moves, which
Yeah.
I realized I forgot to put in the script. We have to have a discussion of moves at
yeah.
some point.
Signature moves.
But this
Yeah.
is going to be my new
That's
move.
your-
It's just showing up people's houses and being like, "Can I take a shower?"
I was just playing beach volleyball.
I was just like,
Love
I'm
it.
really sweaty.
Really, really love it.
But what that actually looks like for me, if I was like just playing basketball or like exercising or something, I would be like so red and I would have a migraine.
Actually, I had a recent example
Can I
of
lay
this
down?
happening when you were away the other weekend. I went running every morning and left the kids here, and then I like came back and I did my exercises on the porch, like my stretching on the porch afterward. and we have a new roommate downstairs. And he happened to look out the window when I was doing like stretching on the porch, and he ran outside because he thought it was a medical emergency. So yeah, that's
Also what you look like after sex.
like it was a medical emergency. Yeah, well, a lot of my life actually does kind of feel like a medical emergency.
It all is now.
actually is.
That's not what you look like after sex. Actually. You look very composed.
Well, how would you know? You're always asleep.
Yeah. Or not there.
God damn it. Okay, so Top Gun. What about you, Jessica?
Yeah.
Good sex.
Oh God, sorry. I can't remember this sex scene from Top Gun, but I got totally taken away by your descriptions.
Did we take your breath away?
You took my breath away. You know, it's a thing of beauty. But yeah. I mean, I feel like a good cliche in movies and stuff is there's always like, you're sort of slammed up against the door and then, go through the doorway and then you're like taking your clothes off on your way to the bed. Right.
Oh, that's good.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Oh, yeah, that's good. And also sometimes like their manicured nails clutching sheets.
Ooh, yep.
Yeah, but these are like two different. That one's more in mine, I think, and what Jessica's talking about is more like spontaneous. Like this was a bad idea, but
we couldn't help ourselves.
Can't help it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And a little bit like, especially like the man was like, I was going to keep myself like restrained. I wasn't going to do it.
Right.
Couldn't help
and
it.
the man, as we've discussed before, is Michael Douglas.
It's always Michael Douglas,
It's Michael Douglas.
who you think is Richard Gere.
I think Richard Gere, Michael Douglas, and Warren Beatty are all the same person.
Yeah,
and they're all who that Carly Simon song is about.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I probably think that song is about them.
Wait, it's actually about Warren Beatty.
It's actually
right?
about Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
Thought it was Richard Gere this whole time.
Wow.
Okay,
Anyway, what about you? What about
Okay.
you?
I think you guys have definitely captured some of it. Those are like my early like introductions to sexuality in like the kind of like soft lit 80s and 90s, right? For sure. And then I think now, perhaps in that same kind of like childish way, I'm like, there's some kind of sex that people are having that I am not having that is like the good sex with the capital G and the capital S. And I don't really, I still feel kind of like that little kid where I'm like, I don't really understand. Like maybe they're all saying like, can I take a shower? Maybe there's like gauzy curtains up. Maybe there's like a move that I don't know about. Like there's just like some little foreign neighborhood where people are just like falling together into bed and having some sort of like earth-shattering experience that is perfectly choreographed and everybody had the same good experience at exactly the same time and their depiction of it later also the same.
It's interesting that this is also like sort of pan-cultural. Like we were talking about how like there are different contexts that you could be raised in around like your understanding of sex, but whether you were like raised Christian or like how we were, it's like none of this stuff is like actually that different. There was like a very mainstream culture, like sex is really good. And even if you're not like in a sex positive culture, you're still kind of like, I feel like in the 80s and 90s, it's still like, but once you do it, like even if you don't do it until you're married, like once you finally do it, it's like this. Which I imagine was very distressing for people who waited 25 years of their lives to have sex, imagining it was going to be like that, and then we're trying to make it be that way.
Yeah, that's funny.
And they're just like desperately grasping, getting their nails done and grasping satin sheets or whatever.
This is a poly aside that maybe we will not leave in here, but I just have to say it because it was like a small world moment that I met a new partner of yours yesterday, and that new partner knew the first dude I ever had sex with.
Yeah.
And she brought it up. And I was like, whoa.
She didn't know that was the first person, dude, you had sex with.
No.
She didn't bring that up.
She does now.
No,
she listens to the podcast.
You're right. No, actually, I told her.
Of course you did. Fuck you.
I tell everyone I meet who the first person is.
Anyway, yeah, so I think like what I'm trying to establish here is like there are actual experiences in the world, and then there is this kind of more cinematic, pornographic, always slightly out of reach, saturated with like FOMO type of good sex. And we wanted to talk about it in part because it comes up, I think it comes up a fair amount in polyamory, because you're in these multiple sexual intimate relationships with people who also are. And so there's this kind of inevitable sense of like potential comparison or imagining of something being really different than what you're experiencing. This is also kind of just my toxic trait, is that I am always kind of certain that the experience that I'm having, even like inside the experience, is profoundly different than the experience that everyone else is having, not just with sex. It's like at the Memorial Day barbecue and like
biscuits.
The
like
movies.
Those biscuits are
like, I'm just always like, is this what everybody else is experiencing too? I do like a quick survey. This is the sociological thing.
Like
just to see what everyone's experiencing.
Like you eat a casserole and then you're like, well, this isn't very good. This can't be the same casserole everybody's getting.
Yeah, that's one possible metaphor. And it's not always that the experience I'm having
You're like, no, I've loved every fucking casserole.
It's not that it's all bad. It's just that I'm not sure what other people are experiencing. And I'm curious if there's like a monolithic experience that I'm not having, or if I am having the monolithic experience, or if how different is everyone's experience. This is the kink that I was trying to describe.
Yeah.
And that shows up for me in almost every human experience I've ever had.
Right. I mean, like the idea that there's like not actually a way to know that what I call green is the same thing that you call green, right? Like,
though you and I certainly spent many, many hours trying to establish this very fact back in the early 90s.
We have discussed this extensively over the course of the past 45 years.
But you guys never did that with orgasms.
Not yet.
Yeah, no. Maybe on this podcast episode.
Yeah.
Keep listening.
I feel like I wondered about that. I was like, what is, when I was like a kid or like my first sexual awakening, I was like, is this the thing? Did it happen? You know? And like doubting that.
That it was what had happened.
Yeah. I still doubt that to this day.
And people always say stuff like, oh, well, when it happens, you'll know. It's like, what? What kind of thing is that to say to like a teenager?
As helpful to me as people just telling me to calm down, take it easy, everything's fine. And I was like, you could not have said a more fucked up thing to me if you tried.
Yeah. And I think, okay, so related to this, there's sort of inherent, regardless of your toxic trait, as you put it, there's like an inherent thing where if you're poly, you're going to be thinking about your partners you're going to know that your partners are having sex with other people, and you're going to be like thinking about what that experience is like versus what your experience is like. And I guess like the literature would suggest that we just like believe that pleasure is pleasure and everybody has different experiences and that's okay. And nobody's ever like, your partners are never comparing what it's like with somebody else to what it's like with you.
Yes. Or if they are, it's in this like incredibly enlightened and generous way that you should just be confident enough to understand and believe in and also participate in without ever really talking about it, but it's fine.
Right. But then perhaps the idea that you're thinking too hard about it would actually result in you being worse at sex, and then that, you know, self-perpetuates. Yeah. It's a perpetual motion machine. I think that that comparison thing, I know that a lot of people are experiencing that because when I did some research for this episode, first of all, you know, if you like look for content about, I was just kind of like vaguely trying to get like a sense of like what the culture thought about as good sex beyond those stereotypes that we just described. And when you search for that, you'll find a lot of self-help content related to like sort of understanding what good sex is, making sex better, all sort of positively framed, like you're saying, like much of it doesn't really interrogate like what are the challenges or the problems or the sort of internal insecurities that you would have. It's just sort of like aspirationally, like here's how you should be. And some of it is quite disturbing. Would you like to hear?
I sure would.
Yes, please.
Imagine for a moment that you had the power to give any woman mind-blowing orgasms on command. Imagine for a moment, in case you are a man who's already in a relationship or you are married, that you have the power to completely transform your sex life with your girlfriend or wife and to make it better than it has ever been. To give her so much pleasure that she will do anything you want in the bedroom. And I'm really talking about anything you want. Or in case you are a single guy, imagine that the next woman you meet, that you will be so confident with her when you approach her or when you go on a date with her, because you know that you have what it takes to satisfy her in bed like she's never been satisfied before. And you know for a fact that after one night with you, she will beg you to be your girlfriend and she will do anything for you. That's the...
I mean,
Why did you turn it off?
Because I couldn't take it anymore.
I was having the time of my life.
You can listen to the rest on your own time.
Is he selling vibrators?
No, he is not. He is selling... Oh my God. Sex
Is he
education.
Werner Herzog?
Yeah. If this was Werner Herzog, I'd be like, I feel like maybe he knows what he's talking about.
I would give it a shot.
Yeah. He's selling a course, Sex Education for Men. You get 65% off for Cyber Monday. It's called Beyond Satisfied Pro course, formerly Sex Hacker Pro, is the best sex education course for men. So yeah, that's what it is.
Thoughts, reactions. Well, actually, I want to hear yours first, Alex.
Yes.
What did you pulled this out of a kind of like pool of examples of similar types
a vast ocean of examples of things like this.
Of literal like training and tips for how men can like promise women good sex.
I mean, I started with like what makes for good sex. To be clear, I did not pursue how to be better at sex. I started with what makes for good sex and like kind of trying to get like definitions of that. So I think it's interesting that I ended up very quickly at like it sort of being like monetizing male like sexual prowess as a way to leverage power and control over women.
This is amazing to me because my first thought is, oh, this actually feels kind of recognizable in, I think, the like paradigm of good sex right now between men and women.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a parody, or I don't think it's intended to be, but like
No,
obviously,
it is not.
obviously this is kind of ridiculous, but I think that
I just love that he's German.
yeah, right? He's German.
The Germans know
Or
how to
Austrian.
make things clinical.
Yeah, right?
German engineering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is very, and it's like, yeah, Sex Hacker Pro or whatever. It's
Yeah.
very tech adjacent.
Ooh.
Sorry, you were saying.
There is this like older narrative that, I mean, maybe it's not older, but there is a narrative that men just care about their own pleasure. And you're having bad sex with men because they just want to get you in bed and like get off as fast as possible. And that's all they want. And women are unsatisfied writ large. And you're going to be the exception to that rule. In fact, you're going to be the man who cares about her pleasure. Right?
Yeah.
And then it's funny because it's like it almost goes so far in that direction that it again kind of misses the woman as an actual human being in the scenario. And it's like
Yeah, I imagine
she becomes objectified again, an object to control again, but just through the sort of hypnotism of your ways.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, maybe it is really the same in some ways, but it's in a more. I mean, maybe that was the subtext of the first one the whole time.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like the subtext, both of them are about women kind of as objects.
Yes.
And they're like objects to do things to. And whether it's like for your pleasure explicitly or for her pleasure explicitly, like it feels, she's a thing. and you are going to control this thing.
Well, and it begs the question, why do you want to control her? Like, I think the implication in there and the part that we listened to was sort of like, you want to control her so that then you can make her do
Whatever.
other sexual stuff.
Yeah, that was a really curious part of it for me too.
But then also maybe you want her to do your household chores for you. I don't know.
Actually, the part that I found the most heart
Warming?
warming, I guess is the word I'm looking
Wow,
for.
I didn't know
was
that.
when the next day she will be begging to be your girlfriend.
Yeah.
There was like something so like sweet and like kind of teenagery in it.
Yes.
Like she'll be begging, just begging to be your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then that was like embedded in this like more sinister suggestion that also you will have just manipulated her into doing whatever you want in bed.
Yeah.
It's funny that like you're like, I'm gonna give her a bunch of orgasms through this like special German technique, and at that time not share what I actually want to do. But once I've done that to her enough, then I'll be able to share what I actually want to do.
And I think you arrive at some
Mm.
point where, I mean, I think this is some of the sort of sexual culture that I like grew up in, and it certainly discourages you from, as the man in this scenario, considering what your desires even are.
Yeah, I'm so curious about that.
Yeah.
I want to hear the next installment where we hear what this man really wants to do to this woman that he cannot share
Yeah.
right out the gate.
Right. Yeah. It's just like everything is. Can I read another thing that I think came from a less sales pitchy huckster kind of context, but I think was a Reddit conversation about where somebody asks a very naive, it's like no stupid questions, and somebody asks a very naive question about, like, I think they essentially asked the question that I was asking, and one description response was, what makes someone good at sex? Enthusiasm. Sex is about her. From a male perspective, when a woman is horny, using me for her selfish pleasure or allowing herself to be used out of her head and into sex, it's fucking magic. Her body should be saying, oh my God, fuck me. The man's task is to bring this out of her. If she's having a good time, I'm winning.
Okay.
What do you think about that, Sarah?
You're like, find something not to like in that. Huh? Well, I did.
You don't want him to be winning, huh?
How'd you guess?
Yeah. Yeah. So what is if on the surface that would set, like, I guess to me, putting on a little naive cap, if somebody was like, I just want to make you feel so good that, and it's all about you feeling good. That's my main motivation. That's what sex is for. Me making, if a person is saying that to me, it doesn't, like, what sounds bad about that?
Well, I didn't say that it sounded bad. Exactly. I maybe would want to start by just evaluating before we just get into the Sarah's No Fun show section of the show. If we could just like evaluate what we notice these things have in common, right? Which is that there's a lot of like physical kind of vulnerability, I would say, required of the woman, and this idea that like she is having this like pretty vulnerable experience of nonstop, constant orgasms on command.
On command, instantaneous.
And the man is like this kind of magician who's like doing that to her or whatever. Which, I mean, in and of itself, like, it's fine. It's all fine. It's all fine if that's what people want to do. I just think it's kind of interesting that when we're talking about like, what are our core ideas about good sex and men being good at sex and women being good at sex, this is kind of what gets served up.
Yeah.
And it's very different than this, like, men are just going to use you to get off. But there's still something in it that doesn't feel like all that collaborative or attuned.
Exactly.
And it just feels like, it just like misses me in a way that I don't exactly know how to articulate. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should be doing a survey. Maybe I'm the only one that feels this way. Maybe I'm the only one who doesn't like the casserole or thinks the casserole is like well intended, but could have maybe been executed better if people had asked what kind of casserole they wanted. I don't know.
But they're just like, this is my unstoppable casserole recipe. I heard about it. I paid $50 for this podcast to tell me how to make this casserole.
Well, and then
And
maybe
you're going to fucking like it.
I think also I was like, do you like casserole? Or is it just that who?
No, I'm not eating any of it.
Yeah, I feel like you're just
This is
force
for
feeding
you.
me this casserole that you gave me, and you're not eating any, and it's making me feel suspicious and a little bit
Well, and the other thing that is missed in here,
worried.
if I may, is I really liked your magician. And then I just picture like a guy with a magic wand that can just make you come from across the room. And like, I think most people's experience is they are readily able to make themselves come. And they are probably the best at that of anybody in the world, right? So if that's all it is, then what is the point of having a partner?
Right.
If it's just about coming, just
That's a
about
good
having an
point.
orgasm, then why would you do that with somebody else?
That's interesting. Maybe that's part of what was kind of irritating to me about the last thing that you read, where it's like a man's job is to bring this out in a woman. And I'm like, well, I think that maybe this is also a slightly outdated narrative that like women don't know how to pleasure themselves or like what gives them pleasure or how to make themselves come, or you're like somehow helping to unlock the
Right.
secrets
So-
of their anatomy to them.
So answer my faux naive question though. Like, why? What would you need a partner for?
Well, I think that it is actually for shared vulnerability and connective experience. And it's,
Right. Or like, I think what's kind of like missed in this is like, I guess what I've experienced is that like, as a man, showing up with desire is something that has a lot of value. And like, my partners don't want me to just be doing everything for them. Like, what is really important to them is my desire for them. So if I completely like negate that in some sort of, or like invisibilize that in some sort of like effort to
be the magician.
just be the magician, like that magician waving his magic wand doesn't give it. What's he getting out of it? Right. You
Control.
want the magician to want. Yeah. Right. You're just like the mops and buckets.
Interesting. Yeah,
Being
that is like
control.
kind of the mops and buckets. Or one is like sort of phallic and the other is
Slopping wet.
it's just
Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, I guess I like the way that you put it, but I also think that there's in a more sort of like give and take kind of like example. I find that the best thing that I've been able to bring, or the most like readily valuable thing that I've been able to bring, is like desire. Which is kind of back to the first thing that you were talking about, like of just being like, here's what I want, and you know, I don't care about what your experience is, or I'm like wholly embodying that desire. Not like I don't care, but like, you know.
Yeah, I think the collaborative piece of it is important. It's like people are excited by being desired, and that increases and magnifies their desire.
Right.
And then like you're sort of in hopefully like a positive feedback loop about that.
Yeah.
I know that it's kind of complicated for everyone. It's hard to be vulnerable. And I wanted to like maybe take a step back from my own experience to say that as a therapist and someone who like works with queer poly communities and people in relationships, I know that these like challenges around sex and vulnerability and insecurity and the worry that you're not doing something right or there's something wrong with you are just so strong for lots and lots of people. And that it's not, I would like to normalize that for everyone. Like if you feel activated by this subject, if you see yourself in any part of it, if you find yourself like worried about those things, if you are not perfectly secure and always sex positive and confident, that's normal.
Yeah.
That's what most people are experiencing. I experience that, but also so do all of my clients. And, you know, I think it is normal.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And like in the context of like my like Google search results or whatever, when somebody asks the question like what makes for somebody being good at sex, like there being a lineup of dudes being like it's this and this and this, like what that person actually probably needs to hear is a little bit more like, dude, I know, I worry about that a lot too. And you know, it's very hard to like everybody's going to tell you that it's like confidence, but it's very hard to actually be confident.
Yeah.
And you know, you're not going to actually feel confident when somebody tells you what moves to do or whatever the fuck. Like, you know, it's just like
And
none
it's
of that
also
is
men are so, especially like the online world of men, it's so competitive and
Yeah.
it's so like hierarchical and it's so kind of, it's not very fun and it's not very inviting and it just feels like kind of there's like some undercurrent of manipulation and things seeming kind of scary even when like the words are put together the right way.
Yeah.
You know?
Dare I say it might have something to do with capitalism.
You dare.
How far into the episode are we?
You dare say that.
Perfect. Right,
right
on time.
schedule. Yeah. Right. It's being like people's anxieties are being exploited and monetized.
And we also are doing all of this like we'll touch back on the last episode about the death of heterosexuality, which everybody loved so much.
Bottle that shit and sell it. Hell yeah.
If I just had that
Money in the
accent, see,
bank.
maybe if I just had that guy's accent, I could. But I think that there is a sense that we could be closer with each other, that we could be like communicating in a more like effective, fun way. But we don't know how because we would first have to like identify what doesn't feel right and how it's embedded in like larger kind of systems. You brought up capitalism, so it's not my fault that I'm talking about larger systems. That don't feel very good, you know, around like control and competition and like kind of winning, to use that language, by getting someone else to be vulnerable and not you. And I think like that is ultimately like now that I'm listening to all of the anxiety in my body, that's what's coming up for me is that there is like this sense in some of these narratives and some of my experiences, and especially around like what you found online, that it's like, how do we like trick the women into being vulnerable without actually having to be vulnerable ourselves?
Yeah. Well, and even what I said, like showing up and just embodying male desire, that's not really that. It's like kind of vulnerable in a way, but it's sort of like a caricature of that sometimes. It's not necessarily like, you know, I think what would be more the challenging level of vulnerability for me is probably like really asking for what I want when it doesn't fit into that like desire-driven stereotype. And even knowing what that is.
Right. Really even being able to access it.
Yeah.
And developing enough of a rapport with somebody, whether that's like on a long timeline or a short timeline where you could maybe touch into that or explore it without it feeling too scary.
Yeah. So I may be going rogue here, but we've sort of talked about how men talk about good sex. How do women talk about it? Or it's actually, we've been talking about how men talk about how women talk about good sex.
I'm interested to hear what Jessica has to say about this. Like the first thing that comes up for me is clients. And frankly, we're not probably talking about really good sex in the context of my office. I'm going to more likely hear about things that are struggles. Although maybe one exception is sometimes in poly dynamics where there's kind of like a I think sometimes there is a type of relationship where a woman, often like a mother and a wife, has a kind of escape with a man who is sometimes also a father, often not, and is just like they are just having like a very sex forward, very like sex specific relationship. And it's often in contrast to a marriage where there maybe isn't a lot of sex or there's been some like sexual struggles. Then sometimes we'll be talking about it in my office. Sex
And
that
what
feels really good and satisfying. And Yeah, you're asking like, what are they?
Well, I mean, I guess in that
Describing?
case, it's like the novelty.
I would say it's the lack of domesticity. I'm not sure that like the acts themselves or like the fact that the person is new, because these are often relationships that go on for quite some time.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it has to do with like not being a domestic context. This is not everything.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm pulling up examples to think of like the different ways that I've heard women talk about good sex. And I think that's one that I've heard multiple times.
And so it's sort of like reflective of the like Madonna whore complex, but
Yeah,
whatever
maybe
the male version of that is.
some sort of inverse of that. Women talk about good sex in my office. I'm really specifically looking for women talking about sex with men, because there's like queer sex to discuss here, which I want to just like clarify that we're kind of like honed in on women having sex with men right now.
Yeah, we are.
And I do want to do an episode about queer sex
going
and this very topic with queer sex, and we have a cool guest in mind for that, and so we will. But I just wanted to acknowledge that that's like the norm here for a reason.
Queers, turn it off right now.
So other
don't.
ways that sometimes my clients who are women talk about good sex with men when they feel safe. When they feel safe to be themselves, when they feel safe to like a thing that comes up, believe it or not.
When the women feel safe to
Yeah.
themselves.
I think sometimes women feel a lot of pressure to perform sexually, and we've talked about that on this show. And they'll have a lot of anxiety about like being able to come and being able to come in the ways that like men want them to.
Yeah.
And so they'll talk about like feeling like they're with somebody who is like safe and patient and isn't pressuring them.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, I mean, we had a conversation about this the other night with somebody.
Oh yeah.
And they seem to be evoking really enjoying their partner, again, being sort of super like vulnerable, but like, I don't know how to describe it without being explicit, but
that was like a kind of gender role reversal. Like
yeah.
in that case, the person that we were talking to was talking about they're a woman, they were with a male partner. Both of them are queer. And so this is kind of like, I think, veering into talking about like how queer sex and queer people having sex and queering some of these like narratives from the internet could be helpful in the way we think about it. But she was describing enjoying being in a position where the man was like really submissive, but like in a way that was clear. It was like, I'm going to be kind of submissive here, and this is what I like want to experience, and that she liked that because that felt clear and fun.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else? What do you think, Jess?
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of trying to scroll through my memory here, and I don't have tons and tons of memories of women talking to me about good sex with men.
Not really, no.
Which is not to say that it's not happening.
It might have something to do with the women we're hanging out with.
Might have something to do with the women we're hanging out with. I do have a lot of memories of women describing the first time or a first like highly successful time of having sex with another woman and it being different.
Yeah.
But again, queer sex episode, we'll come back to that. You know, I mean, but I do have lots of memories of women describing like difficult or awkward or, you know, like obviously there's some really bad stuff, but a lot of just like sort of in the medium, bad, uncomfortable, weird, you know, possibly because that's like, there's more to talk about there, right? And they might bring a conversation that they want to kind of like troubleshoot with other people. It's also sort of like...
It's a better story, like you were saying.
Right. It's a better story. Or like they want to workshop it.
Yeah.
Like, is this happening to you too? But, you know, when it's good, you kind of maybe hear less about it. I don't know.
I think maybe also this speaks to the idea that, and I wanted to get back to this because it's kind of a curious fear of yours that I want to know more about. I think it is not that common, and I'm like welcoming feedback here from people who will disagree with me or explain something that I don't know. I don't think it's that common for women to have experiences with men that are just like really, really different than other experiences they've had with men. It's, you know what I mean? It's not like, I was having this standard experience with men, and then I had this like totally different type of experience with a man. It's like it's all on a kind of spectrum of things that are pretty like known. And like sometimes there are things that happen that are uncomfortable or awkward or that didn't feel good, and sometimes there are things that happen that like did, and sometimes it was a mixed bag. But I think maybe that's part of what's emerging for me is that I don't think I've ever heard a woman be like, and this man showed up with a dick that you would not believe that could just do things to me that I did not even know was possible. It's like,
yeah, counterintuitively, I feel like I have heard that from a couple of women, not about me. But
speaking of vulnerability, thank you, Alex.
I don't know why they were telling me. But in both the cases that I can remember, one was like describing somebody who was very like sort of extremely almost like in a sort of distant clinical way, to go back to our German friend, focused on the woman's experience.
Like just trying to make her come a bunch?
Just trying to make her come a bunch and sort of negating his own.
Well, I have had that experience too.
The other one was...
Have you, Jessica?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I don't... Yeah, okay.
But she was telling me how great it was. And the other one was... And not just the experience of somebody trying to do that, but like the way that it happened. And the other one, I think... I don't really know exactly... It was like that the vibes were really good. I think one thing I noticed that in both cases, like to your point... These were people who these women were not in a consistent relationship with.
That makes sense.
Even when perhaps they could be. Like that they had not pursued an ongoing relationship with this person who made them feel so amazing in like kind of a contained situation.
Did the men come a bunch?
No.
Did the men come at all?
I don't know. In one case, my sense was no, not really. And in the other case, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of in this vein that you're describing, or that you found on the internet.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and like to be clear, like it is a trope that I find very disturbing as well.
Well, I don't know. Yeah. Huh.
And not because I necessarily think I would like to think, oh, that's just really not real, and let's just like kind of make fun of it. But then it is like it is a very broadly present.
I mean, one of the things that's coming up for me, and this is just me talking, is I think it would be more fun-ish for me to be in a situation where a man is just like, I'm just going to make you come a bunch if I wasn't trying to have a relationship with him, And I'm just like, okay, I guess if that's your thing. But if I am trying to have a relationship with him, like I want to have like shared reciprocal vulnerability, and I want him to like help me make him come, and I want to know what his desire is, and I don't want to just like be a kind of specimen in that way.
Yeah.
And so I that's one thought that's coming up for me.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny with those two examples, like, I don't know, Sarah was like, oh, people don't talk about it sounded like you were going to tell stories of an amazing move, which like I, in my mind was like a physical something. Right. But I mean, one of your descriptions was literally, oh, the vibes were good.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about like a physical action.
And
it is about the like,
was this a squirting thing?
It wasn't a squirting thing. No,
Okay,
I've heard that too, but,
just had to clarify.
Yeah, I do think there are like physical things that are out there, but again, I don't think that they're universal. I think that again, like this sort of like trope, the idea that you could kind of like mechanize and just like learn something, I think maybe that is sort of true in the terms of like showing a general interest in anatomy and like an understanding of that, would take you some way, but probably beyond that, it's not like there's like, up, down, A, B, start or whatever, like the Double Dragon cheat code from the Nintendo game. If only it were so simple.
That doesn't sound simple to me.
No. Everybody. A lot of them haven't memorized though.
I was like, what? Oh, video games.
Yeah,
Okay.
I probably did it wrong actually. Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm just thinking about video games. But also, this is just like a thing that I've sort of like the thing that we're talking about right now. This idea that there are some magical wizard men who are like really good at sex, and then that they would come along and like be able to exert control over women or like my female partners, and that part of that would perhaps be their like kind of mysteriousness or like otherness or strangerness, and perhaps their lack of domesticity, aka read their like lack of responsibility. All of that is like a pretty
Interesting.
You know, it's like some like pretty like core material that I think is also like reinforced kind of in culture, or like the culture that like I was raised in, and it's sort of reinforced in like porn. It's just like there, kind of like there a lot, and it like gives me a little bit of a like a panicked feeling, I guess.
Yeah. I'm so curious about that,
Yeah.
and I want to explore it more. I have to pee. It's part of what I just like all of this stuff about sex and good sex and kind of like competitively good sex just really bothers me, is because there's something like inherently kind of depressing and alienating about it
Yeah.
that I can't seem to get over, no matter how much sex I have, which is like a lot. I don't mean that in a braggy way. I'm just like, I'm definitely out here having sex
Like,
a lot.
I've had a lot of mediocre sex, let me
No,
tell
I
you.
didn't mean it like that.
No, I'm sorry. I
I
know you
just
didn't
mean
it
like
that.
I keep thinking if I have enough sex with enough people in enough different contexts, maybe this like piece of me will unravel a little bit. Like this part of me that's like kind of wound up about power and I don't know, connection and vulnerability, and it just doesn't, you know?
Mhm.
Like I want to be clear about my sociology kink or whatever. When I'm having sex, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy lots of different types of sex with lots of different types of people. And I am not analyzing the sex when I'm in it like this, okay?
Yeah.
That comes later.
But I do a lot of it later. I really, really do. I will admit to that. And I think that...
The clipboard is safely stored in the bedside table drawer to be pulled out.
Yeah. But I think a lot of it is me just trying to be like, what is this part of me that can't fucking relax here?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know? And there is a part of me that is like vigilant and it's on guard and it does not trust what is going on. And I don't know how to make it relax. I don't know if that's my own pathology. I don't know if that's part of my sociology kink. I don't know if I just haven't found the right man to fuck it out of me. Okay?
Yeah. Up until the last part, I was completely with you. And that is exactly what I'm expressing too. And I'm like drilling down on the specifics of that because I'm trying to like kind of get to the bottom of it, not because I like feel that it's true.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's hard because there is this like, at the top of the episode, we were kind of talking about people who are really like confidently sex positive, polyevangelists, like multiple partners. You just have to be like confident and caring and it all works out. And I think like it's tough because I do kind of internalize that. And I'm like, well, maybe I could be that way if I could just figure out what this like vigilant part of me is, or what this part of me is that like doesn't feel like I can experience good sex in the way I imagine those folks experiencing it, because I have this like little vigilant person that's like, something here doesn't feel right, you know?
I found it liberating recently when it was revealed to me how many boundaries people in those contexts have as well. And like that's been my experience again and again in like the sort of limited, like extremely sex posy sex posi, sex posi environments that I've been in is that like I go into them being like, oh, everybody's just like fucking everybody and it's a fucking free for all and people are just meeting eyes across the room and be like, let's fuck right now. And doing that, it's like, I think you can find the people who have the sort of like most like unfettered comfort level in one realm, and then there's people who have that in another realm, and then there's people who have that in another realm, and they're kind of always different for different people, and different people have different boundaries. And if you combine all of those together into a sense of anxiety, then you feel like you're comparing yourself to all of them at once, and then you're like, I should be free in all of these ways. And like a lot of the people who are like having really anonymous spontaneous sex outside of their primary partnership are like not poly. They're not having relationships with any other people. That's the only thing they do outside of their relationship. Or, you know, there's often restrictions like that. Or they're only doing oral sex with other people, or they're only doing it together with their partner, or, you know, there's all of these boundaries that people have. It's helpful to keep that in mind.
It is helpful to keep that in mind.
For me.
And it's also helpful to just remember that some people's the jobs they pursued are ones where you are analyzing the intimate experiences of people's lives. And some people are not doing that. And that's okay. It's okay to be both types of people.
Yeah, you guys don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I find myself really curious. Like, you two have been married for like 17 years. Is that true? I mean, and you had been together for like 10 years before that?
No.
Or like, not maybe contiguously.
Like how we're just like
How
I'm
old
not gonna
do
let
you
you
think we
answer
are?
Absolutely not. I mean, so you guys are in your
We got together in an
70s.
arranged marriage at 10.
Yeah. Berlin, 1942.
But to your point, Alex and I got
Yes,
together at
we have
23.
been
We got
together.
married at 28. And we've been together for ever since.
The first time we had sex was probably in 1998.
Sounds right.
Yeah. 1998. I mean, and I know that is, you guys were basically infants then. So.
It was highly illegal.
But yeah, I mean, I guess like I have no idea what it's like to have had sex with the same person over that like time span. And in some ways, like it strikes me that would be a very like, there would be a lot of like safety in that in a lot of ways. But maybe also like, I mean, I also have known you guys since then and you're different than you were then. You've changed, grown, learned a lot, been through some shit.
We look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Though.
I mean, you do. Don't look a day over 17.
But with a 45-year-old's sexual experience. So it's really in the total package.
Wow.
Yes, it's all true. What was the question?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the question is like, I don't know. What is that like?
What is good sex between us?
Yeah. Yeah. And has it changed?
Yeah. It, I would say, has evolved quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
And it is pretty no. It is pretty consistently like fun. I can't really remember a period where we like had a really hard time sexually in our relationship, other than maybe when you had giant babies, and the immediate after. But still.
Yeah. I think that early on when we were really young, I didn't know how to come with men all the time. Like, oh, that was like a...
And I only knew how to come with women all the time.
And so I do remember earlier conversations. I mean, it's so long ago now that it's hard to pinpoint them, where I told you that. And you were like, what? And I was like, yeah, only sometimes. It's not every time. And then like I know.
And then I went on the 1999 version of the
what it
internet
was.
and was like,
I can just hear like the dial-up connection.
a diagram slowly loaded, revealing the location of your clitoris.
You know, and I think in the beginning we had like pretty, you know, standard, like same type of sex that we like was probably like the least exploratory. And
But I remember it being so much fun.
it was really fun. I mean, that's the thing.
I mean, I guess we were anxious. I was probably anxious about it a lot, but in retrospect, it seems
it was fun. And I think like
I was like very excited about it.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we were like learning together. You were and have been my longest sexual relationship with anybody. And like at that point in my life, in my early mid 20s, I had slept with a handful of people, but I hadn't like known and had sex with one person for more than like a year or two, you know? And so getting into a relationship where we got to learn each other and experience each other over many years.
Yeah.
And where you know, sex didn't feel like something that was scarce. And then it did for a while when the kids were young. We're like, oh my God, how can we have sex?
Yeah. But we are very good at having sex with children around.
Yeah, giant lock on the door.
Yeah. If we were going to be internet hucksters of sex advice, that would be
Giant
what
lock
I
on
would
the door.
choose. How to get off in 37 seconds at 7:15 a.m.
Well, and that is like
on a
funny
Tuesday.
to think about how it has evolved, because like in those early years, you know, I'm thinking about like all the times we spent like living abroad and like didn't have kids, and like our time was really our own. And we did have like
visiting theocracies
where we pretended to be married because it was illegal for us to be in the same hotel room if we weren't. But, you know, where it was just like you could explore and know that like you could do that the whole next day if you wanted to, or like the next night. And it was a like very different era in that sense. And I feel like I learned a lot about you and about myself and my own body and like sex in general. And we would like go through, if I were to describe like the eras, it's like you go through an era of like first learning each other, and then we're like, oh, look, we found the stuff that we like. Let's like do this stuff a lot. And then like something about our lives would change. And so like the sex would have to change. You go through this era, whether it was like, now we are living together all the time, or now like we have kids, or now like we're both exploring queerness, or now we're sleeping with other people. And so then you're like, okay, new inputs, new like different circumstances. Now we're like in a learning each other again period. And then you're like, oh shit, look, we found this stuff that we like. Let's do that a bunch.
How do you feel like having relationships with other people impacted or having sex with other people? Like we didn't have sex with anybody else that I know of for a long time. And then we started to. How do you feel like that changed things?
Well, the first thing I would say is I think it made me appreciate our sexual relationship. Just that like having a rapport with somebody and trust and like a physical, just like relationship that is so like well explored, and there's like a lot of love and desire there. It doesn't come easily, and you're not just gonna find that on a dating app.
And the flip side of like the appeal of novelty is like having a lot of rapport and like security.
Yeah, and I think just like knowing that this is a person that like you get to keep exploring with, you know?
How do you mean? Like, because in other relationships you would be afraid that you would do something wrong and it would end?
Yeah, or it's just like
a scarcity feeling.
It might be one night, it might be 2 months, it might be a year, but like there are only so many 20-year long sexual relationships that you're going to have probably in your life, right?
Yeah. Well, and it also takes less pressure off of like every single time. It doesn't have to be, you know, you're not proving your
desirability or desire.
Yeah.
Every time.
Or like the essence of your sexual prowess or whatever the fuck. Like you can.
And sometimes it's just fun. You're like, oh, let's get each other off. Okay,
Right.
let's do it as quickly as possible.
Right. Yeah.
But also, I think that it helped explore like who I was and I think who you were outside of the context of our relationship, and then sometimes bring some of those things back into our sexual dynamic, and sometimes be like, those are things that kind of stay in other relationships because they don't make sense between us. And I think that like built confidence, built rapport. I know that like there were eras in there where I think sometimes I was like more adventurous or exploratory than you wanted to be, like before we opened up. And then when we opened up, I feel like that lessened considerably.
I feel like I've selectively forgotten.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was just even thinking about like talking like really a lot and dirtily.
Dirtily. Fucking dirtily. Alternative podcast title.
And you would just be like, what are you saying? And I was like, I don't know. What did I say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
I mean, I'm a
things like
bit of
that.
a square.
You are not. I mean, everybody's got
I'm a verbal square, I would say. Yeah. That's
got their
true.
squares and their
Yeah.
circles.
Yeah.
But as I've tried to answer this question before with people, I feel like writ large, there is this like long sexual relationship that we've had, but we've had so many of them inside of it. You know, there's probably some like shared DNA with like those two 23-year-olds having sex in a hotel room in Spain, you know, but
I can't remember Florence.
I was thinking about
That side of that mountain where the
that's
bull
what I was
almost killed
thinking
us.
about,
Yeah. That was a good one. It's because I took a picture. And it lasted longer. So, yeah. But there's something that is added to the, like, allowed for the longevity of that, too, which I think is not a thing that, like, I think that's elusive for some people. So I feel like we're very lucky for it as to have like continued, you know,
to have like a pretty
for us to still have a sexual relationship,
pretty strong sexual relationship.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this has masterfully led us to the best piece of advice or analysis that I found in my Googling, which was about like research into what made for good sex. The most like sort of like meaningful and I think evidence-based thing was this article that we'll share again from The Cut. I need to get off there, Jock, but I won't. They got good SEO, I guess, which was basically finding that like the key indicator to good sex is partner-specific learning, and is in fact just like that you're, you know, I guess part of that is being attuned. Like the other things that come up are like confidence and curiosity and attunement. You have to do all of those things maybe, but like then getting to a place where you have learned what your partner likes. And it's not some sort of like specific move that works on everybody or some specific presentation or way of being, but in fact like understanding your partner's sexuality and meeting them there.
Yeah, and I think like building a language between the two of you, you know, and that's where that like sort of collaborative, that's probably why the things on the internet were a little bit distressing, is because that's like, I'm going to manipulate someone into doing the things that I want, or, you know, manipulate someone. It's not like we're going to share with each other the things that we like and we're going to iterate on that and explore and learn from it. And we're not going to put a ton of pressure on every single one of those instances for it to either be like good sex with a capital G or a disaster, you know, but where there's like a sense of like fun and play and trust, you know.
Yeah, and creativity.
And creativity, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know where that puts you if you're trying to just go out and fuck people that you don't know.
Well, that maybe is where the moves come in.
Okay, yeah. Say
like,
more.
maybe to our point that like those are experiences. I mean, I've also done some of that, like not a ton. It's not
Some
like
moves.
just going out and having sex with people and not trying to turn it into a relationship. So it's not like I'm completely unfamiliar with how that can be like a fun and pleasurable experience,
Right.
you know? But I think that that's probably more the like, here's what I want, here's what you want. We're going to come together and see what that experience is like. And then that's all that happened. That's what we did. And so it has a little less pressure on it, maybe inherently because of that.
Right. And maybe in those situations, coming in with an extreme level of confidence, even if it's not fully embodied, is kind of makes it more fun.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, here's me and my moves. Check them out. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I mean, I think also it's okay for good sex to not be perfect sex. And that's like one of the things that I keep wanting to kind of come back to, and maybe is worth saying here, that good sex is maybe by my definition not perfect sex. You know, I think good sex is where people are vulnerable, connected, it's fun, it's communicative, and reciprocal in some way that is like clear. And none of that is going to happen perfectly. You know, in fact, by definition, it's kind of imperfect. And so that kind of comes back to my joke in the beginning. What is the best sex you've ever had? And it's like the sex where we weren't trying to have the best sex.
Yeah. I like that.
All right.
Okay.
Let us have it, audience. Thank you for talking to us about this. Like Jessica, Alex, thanks for talking to me about it. Thank it's kind of a hard episode, but it'll be one of more, I think, on the topic.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited to talk about bring the queerness into it a little bit, because I think we're starting to touch on how important that is, even for straight people, probably, in understanding better how to feel better about sex. Thank you for listening to Mistakes Were Made. Follow us on Instagram and send us an email, and we will write back and tell you our thoughts about what you said. This happens sometimes. Trust me. It only takes like a month sometimes, but and we'll be back in 3 weeks with another episode.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.